Welcome to Safest Family on the Block. Today we're going to talk about cybersecurity, sexting, sextortion, online scams, cyberbullying, that sort of thing. And we're talking with Andy Murphy, host of the Family podcast.
Hey everybody, welcome back to Safest Family on the Block. This is Jason, and joining me today is Brian Klems, author extraordinaire. Hello, Brian.
Hey, Jason, how are you doing today?
So far so good. How about your own self?
Oh, I've been doing great. Just having the typical morning of getting everybody up and ready and out the door for school. So lots of fun there.
Now, the fun kind of situation you're in is when you say everybody, you mean roughly 36 girls.
Yeah, something like that. It's pretty wild. I have three daughters. They're all now teenagers, but they're a lot of fun and all about 2 years apart in almost 18, 16, and actually 14 here in about a week. So pretty wild.
So 3 teenage girls in the house right now.
Yes, 3 teenage girls in the house right now. It gets to be messy every once in a while. It's great. They're actually like really close and like best friends. And then occasional days they will be worst enemies like anyone else and just nitpick at each other. And those days are I tend to play the intermediary of trying to justice of the peace there. Doesn't work, but I try.
And Brian went and wrote a book about this experience for other fathers or potential fathers of girls called, cleverly, "Oh Boy, You're Having a Girl." And the first question I have about that is, how did you get a blurb from Dave frickin' Barry?
Well, it's funny. It actually is a really good story. So I'm a writer. I've been a writer for years. I've worked in magazine publishing and all that kind of stuff. And when I wrote my book and I had the book deal going along, I have a literary agent and talked to my literary agent, and she was like, "All right, now's the fun time to get book blurbs, to reach out, make your list, your dream list." And I made this dream list, and Dave Barry is one of the reasons, and probably the main reason, I got into humor writing. I love his books. I've been reading them for years. Just a huge fan. And anyway, to make a long story short, she had me go through the list, and she had like this template email where she would send to the agents of the other writers to ask for this kind of thing. And in the middle, I was supposed to write a couple of paragraphs of why it was important this writer would consider me. And so I told her, Dave Barry was number one. I did it for a bunch of authors, but Dave Barry was number one. And as I was writing my couple paragraphs, I kept rewriting, heaping praise, but it was all true and sincere. And then I actually remembered I worked for Writer's Digest magazine for about 14 years, and we had in one of the issues one year, they asked all of us editors to recommend one book that we thought everyone should read. And, most of the editors did Catcher in the Rye and The Great Gatsby. And here's my dumb head in the bottom corner that says, I think everyone should read Dave Barry Slept Here. It's like my favorite book and all this kind of stuff. And I remembered that, so I took a picture of it. I included it with that letter that we sent to him. And my agent then reached out back to me one day and said, "Hey, just so you know, they got our email. They said no promises whatsoever. They may take a look at it, but can't promise anything." And she's like, "That's usually a polite way of saying no." And I said, "Oh, okay, good to know." And then she called me another day and she said, "Brian, are you sitting?" And I was like, "No, you know me. I'm never sitting. I'm constantly on the go, moving. I have 3 daughters. I can't sit still." And she's like, "Well, hey, I just want to call and tell you we got an email from Dave Barry, and it said, and the quote was something like, 'I wish I had read this very funny book sooner to know that it was okay for a grown man to wear a tutu. Dave Barry." And it was awesome. And I thought for the rest of my life, no matter how many lousy reviews I get on Amazon or anything like that, I know that my writing hero appreciated my writing. And so it was kind of a dream come true. After wife having kids, my book come out, then it's like Dave Barry approval of my book. So that was awesome.
Yeah, and folks, having read the book, you can see the influence of Dave Barry in the book. It has a very similar tone, kind of some of the joke structure, the ones that make you belly laugh on, at the break room at work. And for those of us who are old enough to remember Dave Barry's columns,
Yeah.
it's got that style. I remember I spent a couple years in Japan, and Dave Barry has a book about his time in Japan. And it was this dog-eared, torn up, like passed from one person at the English school I worked at to the next one, and it was, yeah, it's good stuff. And a lot of it is humor based. In fact, the whole thing's humorous. There's the 10 Commandments of participating in a tea party, for instance, and the stages of grief as applied to the wearing of pink is another fun gag in there.
Oh yeah.
But beyond the humor of it, you're in a situation where, and you mentioned this a little bit, there's that great thing about, oh, now you understand why your father-in-law hates you.
Yeah, that's a lot of fun. My oldest is dating now, and it's been a new experience. And I have to admit, the young man she's dating is wonderful. He's a lot of fun and super nice. But you realize how stressful that is, and as you transition from those younger years, because I know the book is really based around younger years, early on, but as you transition into those tween and teen years and they go through all these new experiences, you realize you also go through all these new experiences, and dating is one of them. And it was extremely jarring at first, but I've been getting a little used to it.
Oh, I bet. And that's an interesting topic that I'm sure you've prepared for and are now executing the plan that you developed before your girl started dating. And that one of the questions that I get asked a lot in the consulting and the coaching that I do is there's risks for girls dating. I mean, this is a modern world, and their gender as a spectrum and all of that, and some of the things we're going to talk about are sexist, but crime is also sexist. And there are risks to young women and girls dating that men generally don't face. And so what are some of the things that you have put in place in your raising of your daughters to address those risks?
Sure. The number one thing that we have done, and my wife and I have actually talked about this, we talked about it for a long time, and one is the true open and honest communication on all fronts with the kids. We tried to build that honesty from a young age, almost too honest to a point where, admitting some faults in general or things like that to the kids, and talking about how straightforward we are about things. So that way, when we talk about more serious topics such as this and safety and being a young woman or a young person or whatever, knowing that, one, they can always come to us about anything. Two, how to spot things that would make them uncomfortable. And if they're in a moment or in anything where they feel uncomfortable in any which way, shape, or form, how they can always reach out to us at any point. Call us, text us, send a message. We will be there. We will make sure we will get there super fast. If they're ever in a situation where they're uncomfortable, but they're afraid to talk to me or my wife, hopefully that never happens on both fronts. Hopefully nothing puts them in that uncomfortable position, but also hopefully nothing ever makes them feel like they can't talk to us. We also have set up streams of communication with, I have a sister, their aunt, and my wife has a sister, their aunt, and we're like, you can always go to them as well. As far as safety measures go, that definitely gets in a little tricky, and it's more about teaching them and working with them to make good choices and not put themselves in difficult positions to begin with, or in chances where they have difficult positions to begin with. And so, that's why a lot of things, we admittedly talked about it, and we're comfortable more about, if they're dating someone, having them over our house, making sure we're in a position where, we can be here if needed for anything like that. And so those are some of the measures, we've taken. We're still in the early terrain of everything. And so far, knock on wood, no real problems, no anything like that. And I hope it stays that way, not just for us, but for everyone.
Yeah. I love that you mentioned having them into the house. I mean, that's in my book about family safety. One of the points is inviting the boyfriend or the girlfriend over for dinner. Mm-hmm. And there's a couple of reasons for that. First of all, the research on what family dinner does for kids is impressive. I mean, I think we all kind of felt like having family dinner is good, but there's now research on grades are better, adult income is better, depression and anxiety are down. It's huge. And then if somebody's becoming important to your child, to your daughter or your son, you have them over for dinner. And that gives you a chance to check them out. It gives them a chance to form a relationship with you, which I feel like when you're talking about teenage sexuality and stuff, there's an adversarial relationship with the daughter's parent. that I think feeds into that and accelerates that. And so if you have a relationship with them, I think that mitigates that adversarial relationship. And then if that's somebody that if their family didn't grow up around a dinner table, which a lot of families don't, you're kind of training a potential future son-in-law in how to raise their kids. If it works out, right? You're already if that person becomes your daughter's or your son's person, you're forming those bonds early so that they'll come to you for advice and help. And if it doesn't work out, then that person will have embarrassed themselves at your dinner table enough that you can kid your daughter for the next 20 years. So it's a win-win.
Yeah, it's very true, and I appreciate that advice. We do similar things. It's like with our
Yeah.
kids on the go. You know, our oldest was involved in many academic things and also cross country. Our two younger daughters are big soccer kids, so we're traveling all over, and having those dinners all over the place has been tricky. But like we have worked hard to work in family dinners, and for my oldest, her boyfriend, and any potential future boyfriends from any of the kids, or whomever they're dating, know that we love having them at the dinner table. We're always offering them for them to join us at different things, make them, like you kind of said, when you start to feel part of the family, I think you earn some trust and respect that can build forward, as you're saying. So I agree with you. I think that's incredibly important. I look forward to that kind of stuff. I'm generally, it's funny because, I'm generally a pretty friendly and extroverted person to begin with. I'm always kind of widening my circle in general. And I remember the first time, our oldest had her boyfriend over and we met him for the first time, and it was that kind of awkward, like, I'm not sure how I'm supposed to feel about this in this moment, and it took a little time to get over that. But I thought back to my father-in-law, and my father-in-law and I are pretty close now. I've been very lucky. He's great. Very kind and everything, and I think back, it must have been really awkward the first time he met me. So hopefully, over time, that of course has become a really great relationship. And however things shake out for my oldest and other daughters, I hope to form those relationships too.
Yeah. And I appreciate that you're not addressing this from that kind of stereotypical dad that I think most of it, when we were in high school, so you and I seem about the same age.
Yeah.
About when we were in high school, her dad almost seemed duty bound to try to scare the pants off of us, which creates this adversarial relationship. I mean, when I was 20, dad decided to show me his gun and knife collection before I took his daughter out. And and I get it, kind of, but I think as a society, we've outgrown that and realized that making yourself an ally of the partners that our kids bring home is a much smarter, better, healthier way to do things. And I appreciate that seems to be your vibe.
Yeah, I agree, and I don't know how it works for everybody, but I believe that is the way to do it. And part of it may just be my personality. Like I am not this crazy huge macho guy. Like I just never have been. It's never been my thing, and so having a real adversarial relationship is kind of not natural to me. So it makes a lot of sense to get to know the person, get to understand them. Hopefully they understand me, and I have to laugh because that's what my dad would joke, that when he had two sisters, and that when they would bring boyfriends over, my grandpa would be there sitting in the room looking tough, and then he had a brother, and they would always be sitting there in just their tidy whities, and they were kind of like beefy and everything, and it was totally meant to intimidate and all that kind of stuff. And I have to admit, as I've grown as a dad and grown as a person over the years, my views have probably evolved a lot, and ultimately have become like, I don't know that I'm very intimidating to begin with, but at the same time, like, we're working incredibly hard to raise very strong, thoughtful, intellectual young women that can be intimidating in their own way if they need to be. And so that's kind of the hope, is that combination of everything would allow them to, one, be able to handle situations thoughtfully on their own, and two, when they can't, again, have me and my wife and others in our family as strong resources. But yeah, we're trying to, ultimately, you're hopeful, as you probably think about, you hope that you really truly like the people that they are dating. I know that won't always be the case. I know I dated a few girls. My mom would never say it, but you could tell she was not a fan of. But you hope that you get lucky in those ways.
Yeah, and if they treat your daughter, your child well, then you find ways to like them, I suppose. I haven't had to deal with that too much. Also, I've got two boys, and again, it's a little sexist, but life is sexist in some ways, and this is one of the ways. It is less stressful as a father of boys, the
Mm-hmm.
whole dating thing. And that brings us to one of the particular issues where, as you're saying, you're raising smart, powerful women. And one of the concerns, the pet peeves, if you will, that I have is I'm talking to people about family safety, coaching them, and they want to know about pepper spray or a gun for their daughter if they end up in a situation. But they don't want to talk about all these things they can do so they don't end up in that situation, which is all about uh, presenting as somebody who's not going to be an easy victim, because most criminals are cowards and will choose the easiest victim that they can find. Talking to them about ways to, early indicators that somebody might be abusive or not respectful. One of the classic examples is on a first date, set an arbitrary boundary, like I have to be home by 7, or I don't want to have pizza, or something like that, and just see what this person does with the boundary you set. That's an example of a way to just test, because on a first date, everybody's on their best behavior, and if they're going to ignore your boundaries on the first date, that doesn't bode well for what's going to happen in 6 months. So little things like that to have your daughters not ever have to reach for the pepper spray.
Yeah.
And I'm sure that you and your wife have inculcated some of those things. Would you mind sharing some of those tricks and tips for folks who don't have them yet?
Yeah, sure. So we've talked, from early on. I think having the kids, this sounds, I don't know if it works perfectly, but I think early on with the girls involved in a lot of youth sports, our girls were a little tomboyish and love playing and all that kind of stuff. And they've had different coaches over the years. And I know some people love those incredibly tough coaches and the Bobby Knights of the world. And then I know some are more like, you want the cheerleader coach and everything. And we would talk through because they've experienced kind of all around the spectrum, just depending on what volunteers you have, or, you get to clubs and stuff like that. But we've talked through before with different coaches in their coaching styles. Ultimately, it's like, what are they saying that's really okay that you can learn from, and what are they saying that seems to go beyond, respectful and thoughtful? And that has actually allowed us to open up dialogue on a lot of conversations about, like, hey, if somebody's, if you're in something where somebody you trust is being critical, here are the ways that can be a thoughtful criticism that can allow you to improve when it's instruction to get better. At the same token, if they're going beyond and calling you stupid or using certain language where it's not helpful, like, that's just, in my view, that's destroying the trust that you have with that person. And when you're destroying that trust, then that's a complete huge red flag of, listen, this person doesn't have my best interest in heart. They may think that they do, but clearly at times that they don't. And that can't be okay. And that's kind of like a jumping point into other conversations. I know my wife is talking with my daughter sometimes about, with young people and, not this boyfriend, but some other people in the past, they've been together and making jokes, and they make a lot of jokes, at each other, at each other's expense. And there's a level of, like, clever and humor to it. And then there's, as you know, from reading humor and writing humor, there's also that, like, mean-spirited humor. And stuff like that can stand out to me. It's like that low-hanging fruit where it's like, that's not real fun. I don't have my hair. So a lot of times I get bald jokes all the time. And it's like, most of them are not funny, and I don't mind a bald joke if it's incredibly clever and it's new and takes it to a different level. But most of them are just mean spirited and unfunny. And so I know that's minor, but, like, little things like that have opened conversations with our daughters over time, I think have allowed us to kind of build and build and build over the years of what's okay, what's not okay, how to try to differentiate between the two, and allow them to be stronger, more thoughtful in those relationships, and in theory, not make decisions or put themselves in poor positions or remove themselves from difficult positions, very quickly. So they don't need pepper spray or a gun or anything like that. The hopefulness is that, like you said, they avoid that position in the first place.
Is there something they bring up coaches, because that's actually kind of interesting metaphor, as a lifelong jock, somebody who's raised kids who are in athletics. there's two species of really bad coaches. And one of them is the coach who's a bully. And they really, what they get out of coaching is bullying. And they're abusive, and teaching our daughters and other kids to spot that abusive personality early is smart. And then the other one is the ones that they mean well, but what they really want is the next championship ring, and they're going to burn through their athletes to do it. Another way to say that is they're really after only one thing, which again applies directly to our daughters' dating lives. But that's a really interesting thing, that model of a coach, as in many kids' lives, coaches and teachers are the other relationships that kids have, and teaching them to spot the bad actors in there.
And I will say, as somebody who ended up coaching, I tried to be a role model for, I used to think back to all the coaches I had growing up, and I would think, what did they do that I didn't like? What did they do that I did like? I tried to embrace all that kind of stuff, and I'll never forget with my youngest, I'm a huge baseball fan. I love softball. I coach softball, but our girls only played it for so many years because we lacked kids, but they were big soccer kids, and my youngest in particular, hardcore soccer. And I'll never forget, I had a game one time, and my youngest daughter is very good. I'm biased, but she's very good. Probably one of, if not the best, on our team that I coached with neighborhood kids. And I remember we had a game that was very close, and but I was rotating the kids pretty evenly. They were young, and I was rotating evenly. And it was, one girl used the restroom in the middle of the game, so it threw off the rotation. But I rotated it, and at the end of the game, my daughter and another girl were out because of the rotation and everything. And we ended up losing, and I got a message from one of the parents. It was real funny. She's like, I can't believe that at the end of the game, you didn't have your daughter in, and this other girl, we had a chance to win. And I said, well, it wasn't part of the rotation, and other girls deserve an opportunity to get this chance to win. I mean, this game wasn't super meaningful. It was like another chance to win. And she even joked with me, and she's like, you should have taken my daughter out and put yours in for the chance to win. And I died laughing. I was like, well, that's just not how I'm going to do it. Like, that's not my role. There are other levels where you can do this kind of stuff, and there are going to be other levels where the coaches are a little more tough, and there are different rules and everything in the way they play. But I said, but as far as coaching goes, it's very important to me, and it is even at higher levels, that there's a level of respect. And again, I think that translates into other things in life.
Well, that idea, and again, this translates exactly to the relationships that our daughters are going to get into about, is that coach there to do what's best for their athletes, or are they there to serve their ego?
Yeah. Yeah, very true.
Putting in just the best athletes so you get the W on your record and get an extra slap on the back at the coaches meeting at the end of the season. That's not the way that coaches at that kids coaching level. I think there's a point in high school when you're starting to deal with scholarships, and in college when you're starting to deal with careers, that maybe that's more appropriate. But for kids, for kids sports and other kids activities, forget about it.
Yeah, agreed. I always think with our girls, I always think my view was always, we want to make sure when they're younger it's fun, and it has to continue to be fun, because if not, the kids won't keep playing. And I don't know how it is in your neighborhood or other neighborhoods, but for our neighborhood, it's a smaller neighborhood. So if you have 3-4 kids that don't play, you don't have enough for a team. And on top of that, then everybody loses out. And I'm that mentality. I'm a community guy. I want everybody to have those kind of opportunities and those fun memories. And that was really kind of was always my goal, and still is to this day. And I recognize that there are some who are more passionate and will go on to bigger and better things, just like in other facets of life. They'll all kind of find their way, but for now, it's I want to make sure it's still fun, and I think some coaches forget that.
And that's advice. I called this meeting to talk about advice for girls, but that's good advice for parents in general about coaches, about watching those things on coaches. Another pet peeve of mine is just checking them out a little bit on the level of medical training they have.
Mm-hmm.
Are they a rub some dirt on it, even though it's clearly an open fracture kind of guy, or do they have a well-stocked first aid kit and they've taken some advanced training? Whether or not they're interested in the responsibilities of being a coach, not the ego of being a coach, or in many cases, they're just the last one to say 1, 2, 3, not it when they ask for coaches, and they're just kind of doing it begrudgingly and kind of fumbling along.
That's how I started. I admit,
Yeah.
when they called me to coach the soccer team, my oldest needed a coach, and they said, "Brian, will you do it?" And I said, "Well, listen, I don't really know a lot about soccer at the time. I didn't. I was like, I really don't know a lot about soccer. So why don't you ask everybody else? And if no one will do it, I'll do it." And they said. And it's a true story. They actually said, "You don't understand, Brian. We did ask everybody else. We're down to you." And I was like half offended, but also half impressed because it was the right call. Anyway, that's how I got my storied career started as a soccer coach. But I worked hard. I tried to learn and get better over time.
That's very similar to how I ended up coaching the chess team at my youngest elementary school for 5 years. Second grade, he wanted to join the chess team. We found out there's no chess team. I go to the principal. Hey, Principal Meilenberg, why isn't there a chess team? And he just looked me in the eye and said, because I don't have a parent volunteer to run the chess team, Mr. Brick.
Yeah.
And maintained eye contact until he had a chess coach.
Well, that's how you get promoted sometimes.
Exactly. And then, but anyhow, so is there any other really important aspect of raising girls that you wish more people knew?
I think the thing that I have really learned over time that has been effective for me with my girls and everything, and I talked about a lot about the trust, building between the parent-daughter relationship, which is a lot of these things will apply to all kids, but for them, like, building that confidence as much as possible early on, I felt it was incredibly important. That's something I always had, that my wife would go back and forth and would even talk about how when she was younger, she didn't have as much confidence in herself. At certain things, yes. At certain things, no. I've been fortunate in my life that I don't know why I was born this way, but I'm just not afraid to fail at things. And because of that, it has given me the opportunity to build confidence in almost anything because I'm willing to try, make mistakes. And so when they were young, we were always kind of harping on the idea that my favorite word was yet. Like, well, I'm not good at that yet. Like, I don't know anything about that yet. And the more we focused on that, as they were growing, you could see they were just becoming very confident people. And like, they don't have to be great at everything, but they understand that they're not held back by any barriers if it's something that they care about and are interested about. And I think being able to build that confidence, and they all have it. My youngest has almost too much confidence. It's luckily it comes off as swagger and not arrogance, so we always get a little nervous about that. But by doing that and having that, I do 100% believe that when they are confronted with difficult decisions or they are confronted with uncomfortable situations, that they will have confidence that their gut reaction is going to be the right decision, and because of that, most of them, their gut reaction is going to point them in a safety direction. And so that's kind of one of those tips that over time, it's like, we don't beat up on our kids. It doesn't mean we don't correct them, but let them know early on that even through the corrections, like what is the goal through corrections, and even if you have to ground them from a phone, like here's why we're doing this, and always fully explaining and telling them, listen, ultimately we're doing this because we don't want you to make put yourself and make a bad decision later that could get you into trouble. We have kids that at our grade school that have not been able to participate in graduation because of Instagram posts or Snapchat things that they have done because they've crossed certain lines that they shouldn't have been crossing or whatever. Now they're young, and it's like you don't want to punish them forever for this, but you want them to learn and grow from it. And like our girls, we wouldn't really let them get Snapchat and that kind of stuff till they were older, and even then we've told them we would be monitoring, but mostly we are explaining the reason why your friends have it but you don't is not that we don't trust you, is that you're still young, and that we ultimately you can get caught up in something unintentionally, and we don't want that can affect you moving forward for a little while. I mean, nothing will last forever, hopefully, but so really I think to me it's like building that trust and building the confidence are two key cornerstones to controlling what you can control, because as there are a lot of things out there that you have no control over, and your goal is just to have them as best equipped as possible to deal with difficult situations.
Absolutely. And there were 2 points there that I really appreciate. And first of them is that not making a bad day worse. Your kid makes a mistake, it's a hug and a sit down, and you work out together how they're going to manage the consequences with maturity and grace, but we're not going to protect them from the consequences like some parents like to do. And we're not going to throw on extra arbitrary consequences just because we grew up in the just wait till your father gets home era. And then the other one about being willing to admit mistakes and being willing to suck at something new in front of your kids and to admit ignorance about a thing so that, I don't know about that yet. I don't know how to do this yet. So your kids can see that making mistakes isn't some kind of horrible thing. That it's just, sucking at something is the first step in the process of becoming excellent at something. And those are two things that I think people from our generation were not modeled well.
Agreed. I think that was tough. And to go on that a little bit is a concrete example. With my kids, the younger two, as I mentioned, were big into soccer. And when COVID hit, they were younger and you couldn't do as much, but we were at home a lot. And their coaches challenged them to do to learn to juggle. To learn to juggle the soccer ball and everything. Mm-hmm. And they went outside and did it. And my middle daughter dedicates herself and stuff like that. But my younger wants to be good at things right away. Just how she's wired and stuff. And so, but getting them to dedicate themselves outside and learn, I said, I will go out and do it with you. And you know me, I'm a baseball kid. I'm terrible at this. I couldn't get more than two, just showing them a little bit. I said, we're going to do this together. And we took some video early on of everything. And it was a combination of like showing them that I'm older and out of shape, but I'm going to do this and learn to get better with you. And so we all dedicated and went from, they went from, a couple juggles to getting up to, 300, 400, 500. I got to 99 3 times, and I was extremely impressed with that. And I told them, if I can do this, you can always do this. And to quickly your point, not to drag it on a little bit, but I know the kids nowadays have so much information accessible to them. They see videos all the time of people being good at things right, and it looks like they're good at it right away, and they don't understand that, like, it took a long time to get there. And forever we have these videos showing them this is how you started, and it took you time, but you were able to find success doing this. And I think that's, as we were talking, that came to my mind, that I think that's an unintentional but pretty good lesson that they learned, and we hope to carry on, and that you can get good at things. You don't know it yet. You're not good at it yet. Eventually you will be if you care and you work at it.
That's fantastic. Well, Brian, thank you so much for coming on today. Tell folks where they can find your book.
Sure. You can find my book wherever books are sold, your local bookstore. If they don't have it in stock, as it sells out sometimes because it is a big gift book for baby showers and stuff like that, and pregnancies or people who are having a girl for the first time. And you can find it at Amazon. You can find it about anywhere. And if your local bookstore doesn't have it, just request them to get it, and they'll order it for you.
Outstanding. And thanks for coming on today. Thank you, everybody, for watching. No, this was a more humorous episode, but I think we got some real good pieces of information there from someone who has trench experience and is right in the middle of the battle right now. 3 teenage girls, good Lord. So
true. As one's graduating from high school, I'm having that. I'm missing that the little kid ones as you go through the different experience. I love every experience, but I've been very emotional lately. So anyway.
Wow. Well, thank you again. Thank you, everybody, for watching. We'll see you next time. Stay safe, everybody. The best time to make your family safer is yesterday. The second best is right now. So take a minute to identify one thing you learned from this interview that you can take action on today, and another you can make a longer-term project. Speaking of action, if I earned it today, go ahead and hit those like and subscribe buttons. I'm not sure why it helps as much as it does, but it's absolutely essential for a growing channel like this one. If you'd like to support this mission even more deeply, you can sign up for a newsletter and bonus content free over at our Patreon. You'll find the link here. As always, thanks for listening. Stay safe. See you next time.